Welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast, the show by fans for fans of your Milwaukee Brewers.
All right, Brewer fans, welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast with Craig and Vince. Today, hey Vince, how's it going? Happy New Year.
Good. Yeah, Happy New Year, Craig. Happy New Year to Scotty and Chad. Are they on?
Possibly. They got the number, the call-in number, so we'll see.
All right.
But yeah, so we'll talk a little bit of the Brewer news. Unfortunately, there's not any major free agent signings to come to report to you yet, but we got a few transactions and stuff to talk about. Maybe we can talk about some of the players that are still free agents that might be a good fit for the Milwaukee Brewers baseball club, if indeed we're willing to spend any amount of money on any players for our freaking roster. Well, anyway, yeah, so yeah, welcome to 2024. Looking forward to a big Brewer season coming up. Yeah, so let's start with like the news that happened, of course, like the day after our last podcast, I believe. Anyways, but the Brewers made a kind of significant-ish trade with the New York Mets and with their former GM Arnold made it with David Stearns. I'm sure that won't be the last trade between these two guys. Unfortunately, usually probably not to our benefit. But anyway, so the Brewers did trade right-handed pitcher Adrian Hauser and outfielder Tyrone Taylor to the New York Mets for right-handed pitching prospect Coleman Crow. Yeah, I guess, did you like the trade and what were your thoughts on it and so forth?
I didn't really think too much about the trade. I'm not sure that we got a ton of upside in our return. I do understand the need to clear some roster spots. I guess I'm just a little bit more concerned about how we're not really getting value back for anybody that we're letting go from our roster. That being said, I'm not going to lose a ton of sleep about Tyrone Taylor and Adrian Hauser. I do think that, particularly with Tyrone Taylor, the outfield situation really does need to be cleared up. I have a feeling that Jackson Chourio is going to be on our opening day roster, barring some sort of injury or catastrophic performance in spring training. So my guess is that this is more a way to clear some space in the outfield for Chourio than it is for any sort of value that we get back for Tyrone Taylor. And for Hauser, I think it's more of a cost-cutting move. I think his salary was going to go up a little bit in arbitration. This was his last year of arbitration eligibility before hitting free agency going into the 2025 season for Adrian. But I do think that, the issue that I have is going to be, what are we going to use that savings on? I mean, are the Brewers going to actually spend money? We've been hearing now for 2.5 months that, it's still early in the offseason. Here we sit yet again, Craig, where we don't have anything to show for our offseason yet, outside of our manager leaving and trading guys, but not getting much of a return for anything, and signing, backup type players, bench guys that we may be plugging in to be our starting first baseman. So I really don't know what the plan was going into this offseason. And the Brewers payroll is not an albatross around the team. We're significantly lower than last year's payroll already at this point. So my question just always comes back to, what is our plan? What are we actually spending money on at this point?
Yeah, it's very frustrating. I guess first let me comment on the trade. Yeah, Adrian Hauser, obviously back rotation starter, filled in admirably when healthy for the Brewers. I thought he was a valuable piece. And of course, he was originally part of the same trade that brought us Josh Hader over from the Astros organization back in the day. So I thought he kind of exceeded expectations, or my expectations of him, while he was with the club. So kudos to the guy. I think he could be, definitely be a valuable pitcher for the Mets. I could see why the Brewers didn't want to pay him in his arbitration price, because they could probably sign a free agent for about the same price, or at least give some of the younger guys that are ready, major league ready, some play in the major leagues. And I'm really thinking, maybe Robert Gasser, who was part of that trade with the Padres last year. Also happened to be Josh Hader involved, but also even Aaron Ashby, I think, will be returning from injury at some point this year, and it's already been stated that he will be part of the rotation and not the bullpen. So we really just kind of had again, to me, it's always smart going into a Major League Baseball season, especially one that if you expect to contend, to have at least not just your top 5 starters, you should have at least a depth of like 7 or 8 starting pitchers. Because injuries happen all the time to starting pitchers, and the Brewers are well aware of that. With that being said, they're able to use the money they're saved from Hauser to possibly lure someone like Brandon Woodruff back on a 1 or 2 year deal. Obviously, a 2 year deal would make sense.
Yeah.
But then that's fine. But if they do nothing with the money saved, then that's a little bit perplexing. Tyrone Taylor, again, he had some really clutch hits for us down the stretch, and whenever he got opportunity, he seemed to like exceed expectations. So he's like one of those underdog guys that you like to root for. With that being said, I think the Brewers have determined he wasn't going to be an everyday major league player, at least not with this club, with the young talent we have coming up, like you mentioned, with Trio, and of course Mitchell Freelick, and of course we got our franchise player and Christian Yelich also.
Joey Weaver too.
And Joey Weimer as well. So there's obviously a crowded outfield mix. And so I think he was expendable. And again, maybe it's just giving him an opportunity with the Mets as well. And so there you go. So the Brewers seem to target possibly a prospect who's not that highly rated in the Mets, wasn't that highly rated in the Mets system, but he did just have Tommy John surgery last year, and his prospect value was going up right before that happened. So I think they saw something in him that could, he could be a future key arm in the farm system. But as of right now, it was without a doubt a cost-cutting move, in my opinion. And
yeah,
like you said, I feel like they could have, if they would have put those guys out there at other teams, I'm sure the return could have been greater. And it seems like, it's almost like calling a friend and be like, hey, you want this old couch I have or something, like, rather than throwing it up there on Craigslist or something. I mean,
yeah, I'll give you $20 instead of putting it on Marketplace or whatever.
Yeah. So here you go, dude. You want these guys or whatever? Like, because Mark doesn't want to pay them. So, I guess we got plenty of money where I am now. So sure, why not throw them on over? So yeah. Fortunately, it was something like that, most likely. Yeah. So that's a little bit frustrating.
One of the things that kind of struck me, and this comes back again to the cost savings point that I think we're both making here, is that Hauser's projected to make $5.6 million, during the 2024 season, by The Athletic and other sources, the MLB trade rumor site. And I think that Colin Ray signed a deal, who I think is a very, very similar pitcher. I think that Colin Ray's deal for 2024 is $3.5 million. So you're talking about, a reasonable cost savings of, $2 million-ish on that for what I think is a very similar pitcher. So my guess is that Matt Arnold in the Brewers brass feels pretty comfortable going with the less expensive option in Colin Ray. So that's my guess. That being said, you are relying a little bit more on, guys like Ashby coming back from his injury and actually contributing to the rotation, because you are dealing with that depth. And when it comes down to it, paying a guy like Adrian Hauser $5.6 million is kind of a steal on the open market to me, to get a back end of the rotation type of arm, a guy who can pitch out of the bullpen, somebody that knows the organization, that has been around the league for a while, knows the system. For all those reasons, I probably would have kept Hauser personally. But in trying to explain the move, my best guess is that they view Colin Ray as being, a very similar type of pitcher, and are hoping that, Ashby and Miley and others don't have injuries this year, and that the rotation is deep enough. That being said, though, we still don't have Brandon Woodruff coming back. We still are missing, some other pieces that might be necessary. You never know when injury bugs hit, and I do worry a little bit about the depth. But if they end up using that cost savings on bringing in a first baseman, well, then I'll stop complaining at that point if that's the plan. But we'll see.
Or even bringing in a different free agent rotation arm, like a Marcus Stroman or something like that. Like,
well, yeah, that'd be.
And if you're going to put that money towards something great, then I understand the move. Otherwise, on its own, it's just a giveaway. Basically, it's completely a cost-cutting move. And again, you don't hate to see those guys go necessarily, but like you said, there's definitely some value to them. And it's my opinion, Andrew Hauser is a much better pitcher than Colin Ray. Unfortunately, he's not on our organization. Colin Ray is, but with that $2 million, there's a reason there's a difference in that price cost, is because he's just a better pitcher, in my opinion, and with more upside. But anyway, with that being said, it is what it is. So that was one move. We also signed a backup catcher, since of course we lost out our other backup catcher, Victor Caratini. So now it's former Tiger Eric Haas is going to be our catcher, backing up Wilson or William Contreras for 2024. So welcome to organization, Eric. And then one other minor move that we did make this past week, we traded for left-handed relief pitcher Brian Hudson from the Dodgers, and we gave up prospect left-handed pitcher Justin Chambers. Not a highly rated prospect by any means, but I'm not exactly sure what the lure of Brian Hudson was. He's already in his late 20s and has had very little to no Major League Baseball or minor league baseball success so far. So that's a little bit of a head scratcher.
Yeah, most definitely was. I mean, we needed backup catcher. Getting back to the Eric Haas move, I was, excited to see Eric Haas come in as a backup catcher. I give the Brewers organization quite a bit of credit in the catchers department. Being able to take pretty much the majority of guys who have come in, whether as the starter or as the backup catcher over the past 7, 8, 9, 10 seasons even, and transforming them into a very serviceable guy. We've seen that with guys with a lot of talent like William Contreras as he comes in and improves his defense, and we've seen it with others who are more offensive-minded catchers improve their defense. We've seen with defensive-minded guys improve their offense, guys like Victor Caratini. So I think that it's fine to bring in a backup like Eric Haas. I'm excited about seeing what he can do in Milwaukee, and I'm very okay with this move. It was a pretty low dollar amount as a move as well. So I think that the Brewers are going to be well served by Eric Haas as a backup. And don't forget that this is a bridge too. We've got Cuero in the minor leagues that's going to be knocking at the door in the big leagues, hopefully within a year or two, barring some sort of injury. And I think that Haas's deal is for a 1-year deal. So I'm very okay with this as a stopgap for a year, and we'll see what happens going forward.
Yeah. But I do think that Victor Caratini was really good, was really solid with the bat. And I really liked him as a backup catcher. In fact, he was given injury, and luckily Contreras was pretty healthy all of last year. Given injury, I would have been fine with him even starting games. Whereas in this situation, I would prefer not to have him being a starting catcher for any length of time. So with that being said, I'm sure he can handle a staff and whatnot. It's just a veteran backup catcher. These guys bounce around for backup catcher from team to team from year to year all their careers. So it's not a surprising move. There's nothing really exciting about it, but welcome to the organization. Hopefully he does well here. And
I do like Caratini too, for the record, Craig. That was not a rip on Caratini. I think that in fact, I think that with the departure of Martin Maldonado, as many of our listeners may remember, I'm down here in Houston, so I'm near to a lot of Astros moves, and Martin Maldonado, former Brewer, has been the Astros starting catcher for I think the last 4 seasons, and he signed a free agent contract with the Chicago White Sox, and so I think that the plan here in Houston is for Caratini to be the starting catcher. So it's obviously a nod to his talent level, and I think it's going to be a good career move for Caratini to come down to Houston, most likely, just because he is going to be able to start a lot more than the guy who's a backup to William Contreras, who obviously is an all-star level top tier catching talent in the National League.
I will say that the Josh Hader trade is starting to look better and better by each passing month and year. Obviously, we didn't like it at the time. It was devastating and whatnot. But now, long term, I mean, having an all-star level catcher like we do in William Contreras is a very valuable thing to have in baseball, especially with so much team control still. So I do think that really has, in the long term, benefit the club. And I like Robert Gasser as well. So, But with that being said, I think the catching, I like our catching core here going into 2024. And as far as the lefty reliever that the Hudson that the Brewers got from the Dodgers, it's like one of those things where they may have identified that there's one pitch of his that stands out above the rest, and that they really feel that they can mold him into something. And they've done a pretty good job on some reclamation projects in the bullpen. So I guess I'll give this regime the benefit of the doubt if they've seen something in this guy that, and left-handers are always pretty valuable out of the bullpen. So maybe he can become something. Obviously, he's going to be very, very cheap. So it is what it is. So speaking of cheap, I'm got a list of still current free agents here in the offseason. And again, the list gets less exciting by the day. Unfortunately, I'm kind of surprised that Josh Hader is still out there not signed. I'm starting to wonder if
Yeah.
teams are a little bit leery on giving him a really long-term contract. I think he'll hold up for a while still, but again, he does have some mileage on his arm as a reliever, high-end reliever like that. But unfortunately, I don't see the Brewers bringing him back or ponying up the money that would cost, and nor probably should they with Devin Williams in tow. But with that being said,
would that be funny if the Brewers did bring back Hader? I mean, wouldn't that be incredible?
That would be something no one would have expected, I guess, but it would have really paid off then, possibly. Besides missing our window to go really deep in the playoffs and all that such stuff, but maybe the window's not closed. So let's stay positive. But this every season, it seems like we're waiting and waiting and waiting until the bargain bin opens up, and we can just swoop in there and grab whatever is the cheapest corner infielder / DH that's left out on the market and give them a try. And it's really getting frustrating to do that. I mean, it's to the point where like the Brewers are waiting so long that it's like they're waiting to buy Christmas wrapping for Christmas, and they're almost to the point where like they're just going to wait till Christmas is over and grab it at 50% off or something. Like it's just ridiculous, which is really defeats the purpose. So I don't know. Looking at the list of free agents still out there, is there anyone that really? I know we talked about this a little bit last time. Is there? And I know that you identified Whit Merrifield as someone that you really would like us to target as a second baseman, and that's a great name to throw out there. Is there anyone else that kind of intrigues you on this list or on the free?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple guys, and I think that most of the guys actually I was looking at are still available. Oddly enough, Whit Merrifield I think would be a really good addition to the infield mix. I think that would allow us to trade Adames. You can move Terang over to shortstop, or it could allow Terang to be, kind of a defensive sub, a guy who could play second or short. I still don't know what we can expect out of Terang. His bat, really struggled last year, but I do think that he's still got a ton of upside. He played such great defense. I'm inclined to give him another chance up the middle, maybe at shortstop, and trade Adames, for depth in another area, and then sign with Merrifield for, a 2 or 3 year deal. I'd be very comfortable with that. I love Marcus Stroman. I've always loved him. I think he's a great pitcher. I think that he would be a really great addition for the Brewers. You brought up his name earlier this episode. I would be strongly in favor of the Brewers looking at a 2 to 3 year deal for Marcus Stroman. I know he had a rough second half last year. I think he was battling some injuries. Maybe that will be enough to drive his price down because he had such a superb first half that I think that, you could count on him being a good bounce back candidate though overall for 2024. I love his attitude. I love the spark that he could bring to a team. So I'm a huge believer in Marcus Stroman. Love to see him in Milwaukee. And I think he would play with a chip on his shoulder too against the Cubs, which I'd especially enjoy watching. And he could also, if and when Burns does leave, hopefully after the 2024 season, he could be a number 2-ish starter for the Brewers going forward. He's not necessarily going to replace Corbin Burns at this point in his career, but he certainly provides a lot of stability to the top end of that rotation if he does come to Milwaukee. So I'd love to see him there. Outside of that, I've been thinking a little bit about Rhys Hoskins. I think that the Brewers are desperately in need of a first baseman. I would prioritize it probably above the other 2 positions I just mentioned, but I don't know that he's necessarily the answer. My dream would be, Alonso, but I don't know that that's going to happen. So I guess we could dip into free agency at this point and get somebody like a Hopkins. I think that he'd be exciting. Hoskins, I should say. I think he'd be exciting to watch, and he certainly would be an upgrade over what we currently have. So I guess those would be the 3 names I'd throw out there.
Well, Alonso would be a great add, and now that we're best friends with the GM of the Mets, I'm sure there's players on our organization he would love to acquire. But with that being said, Alonso I think is in his last year of arbitration. He'll be a free agent after this year, so it would be a go for it move. And it seems unlikely, something the Brewers have not been doing at all.
I'm in a go for it mentality, Craig. That's the thing, man. I mean, we had a 92 win team last year, and our biggest flaw was offense, and we're not losing much outside of 11 starts or whatever it was from Brandon Woodruff, who I still think we could bring back, and he actually would be the 4th guy I would mention, the 3rd guy on the free agent list itself. So, if I had my dream scenario and we were actually willing to spend some money, I would go and acquire a guy like Alonso. I would, make it so it is that we are heading into the year with some of those holes fixed. If that were the scenario and we had him at first base, I would be a little bit more okay with Tyler Black starting the year as our third baseman. I don't, think that we're going to necessarily upgrade at both positions. So even though that wouldn't be my first pick, and I think that Black could still use some seasoning, I would be okay with that, I guess, under the circumstances, if we were to get at least some power at first. My issue becomes when we don't have an anchor at either one of first or third base.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I'd be super excited like you would be, but I would be shocked also, and I don't expect it, unfortunately. In fact, I don't even expect us to sign a free agent as good as Reese Hoskins, just because of the fact I think he'll price himself out of what we're willing to pay, unfortunately. However, one tier below him, I think Matt Chapman as a third baseman is a possibility, but possibly he's even too expensive. So then you look at, now we've already said that we're not going to move Yelich to first. And we've already basically said that we're not necessarily going to hand Jake Bauers a first base job either. So it leads me to believe we'll bring someone in that can play first base. Now there's Carlos Santana, bringing him back is still an option. He's out there and he had a nice year for the Brewers and whatnot. He is 38 though. Similar old guy like Brandon Belt is not too exciting, or Garrett Cooper. These guys pushing past their mid 30s. Even CJ Crone is afraid, and he comes up every year as a possibility. I'm not exciting at all. One of my old faves is out there, but probably not a possibility, or not, no one to be excited at all, and that's Joey Gallo. So I don't know what to do. Even Joey Votto is out there, who hasn't officially retired, but unless he comes back to the Reds, I don't know that he's gonna. I think he would just go forth with retirement. Another name I'm not interested in, that Dominic Smith is a free agent. I'd prefer. I just don't think he's only 29, but he had a 0 WAR last year or whatever. I don't think he really brings too much to the team. And yeah, so looking at some other free agents that could possibly fill in a DH, I thought, oh God, this sounds like exactly someone the Brewers would sign. Adam Duvall, for some reason, just struck me as like, oh God, that's just some past his prime, never really had a prime, aging veteran with a nice power bat that the Brewers would probably bring in. That just would not be very exciting. So I wouldn't be shocked if we do something like that. Will Myers is still out there, but he's always injury riddled and has disappointing seasons after disappointing seasons. But he can play first base and outfield, or even some other nice bats out there, but we're more DHs than anything else. Are JD Martinez and Jorge Soler. I don't think that they're probably good fits. If we were to have traded our starting shortstop in Adames, Tim Anderson seems like a good buy low free agent. I know he's coming off a bad year and injury and whatnot, but he seems like a really good club, a good guy to have, a nice bat. But again, over to the pitching side of things, I'd love Marcus Stroman or Brandon Woodruff, like you mentioned. Probably not happening on either front, but I would love it. More realistically, I wouldn't be surprised if we brought in like a veteran guy like Michael Lorenzen. Strikes me as someone we'd sign, or maybe even Mike Clevenger. Couple of lefties who I'm not interested in, but usually that means the Brewers are, and that's Sean Manaea and Alex Wood. Even another buy low guy who's under 30 would be Dakota Hudson, former Cardinal, who's coming off injury riddled seasons. But I don't know. I feel like now that we've gotten rid of Howes, we probably need to add at least one arm for depth on the rotation side of things. So we'll see how that plays out. And then as far as the bullpen, I think we still need to add some bullpen arms. I mentioned Phil Matone on last episode, but again, he's just some random guy. Guys that we've been interested in the past, left-handed, Matt Moore would be interesting. Also, well, former Brewer Drew Pomeranz, if he could stay healthy, would be still someone valuable. But even another buy low candidate coming out.
Pomeranz a free agent, Craig? Sorry to interrupt. Is Pomeranz a free agent?
Yeah, Pomeranz is free agent. And then Liam, another buy low White Sox candidate, or former White Sox who's a free agent, Liam Hendricks, former closer, I thought would maybe be a good buy low guy for a setup opportunity, but I'm sure he's probably, him and his agent are probably looking in for a closing opportunity, I'm sure. But there's plenty of other names out there I didn't mention.
I thought Liam Hendricks was hurt.
He came back late last season, pitched a little bit out of the bullpen, but yeah, he was hurt almost all of last year, but he rebounded for the last month of the season. But then now he's a free agent. So, but yeah, he does have a long history of being hurt. So,
but he had a Tommy John surgery in August. I'm getting a note from Scotty's intern right here. I think he's out for a while, isn't he? Still.
Oh, okay. No, okay. Maybe you're right then. I don't want to question Scott's interns.
Yeah, it was from Forrest, Scott's intern. I don't know, but I'm just gonna know from her right now.
Okay, yeah. So I guess he's not a good option. Because that's his second Tommy John, I believe. So yeah, he's definitely crossed him off the list. All right, well, yeah. So who knows? It's starting to dwindle down, like the number of quality free agents that are out there. So again, the Brewers really seem to be fine dipping into their farm system and promoting that ways. And we're really acting like a team that's more of in a half rebuild mode than we are in a contending mode, which to me just it's just kind of a slap in the face as a fan because I feel like this is still a really solid roster, and we're defending NL Central champions. I think we should act that way, and I don't feel that we are.
Yeah, yeah. There's no mentality that's like shouting we're going for the jugular this year. It's like sort of this wishy-washy, typical Atanasio BS. I'm really tired of it, Craig. To be totally frank, as you know, as we talked about in our pre-production meeting, I think that you're right. That's the mentality. I think that you're right that it's an insult to fans. I think that you're correct that we should be thinking that we are the team to beat in this division, and it doesn't seem like we're thinking that way at all. It's like we've got a team sitting at 92 wins who lost a manager, and we're acting like we should be in like a full rebuild when we have a team salary that's less than last year. I mean, I just don't understand what we're looking at doing at this point if it's not to repeat as champions of the Central and go for it in the playoffs with an improved offense. Like that to me should be the plan. And you know what? If we lose Corbin Burns after next season, well, then you come up with another plan at that point. But until then, you try to win it. And if it doesn't go according to plan and the Brewers suck this year and, we're sitting there and it's July and the Brewers are in third place, well, then, yeah, maybe that's when we start saying, okay, we got to sell off some pieces and regroup for, seasons to come and trade Corbin at that point. But, until then, I think that you go for it. You act like a champion. I'm really tired of this mentality. And it's been going
No,
on.
I agree that they should be pushed like with Burns and Adames their last year, and we're us looking like we're not going to trade them this offseason, either of them. Well, you got to pick a lane. You either got to go into some kind of a rebuild or signal that, or act like you're still going to go for it. And again, it sends a signal to the clubhouse too. I mean, it's just you just gotta get it done. So it's frustrating, but hopefully we'll be pleasantly surprised with some shock signing of either a Marcus Stroman or a Reese Hoskins or even a Matt Chapman or something like that. But I mean, I just don't want it to be Adam Duvall, Michael Lorenzen, and then like call it a day or whatever. I mean, like, but that's what I'm fully expecting.
Yeah, I mean, every year is the same exact story, and we fall for it every single year. It's really frustrating. It's Jesse Winker.
They're just really devaluing the offense.
Jackie Bradley Jr. It's just like you recycle crap. It's still crap. I mean, I don't understand not that these people are like that as human beings. Let me rephrase that. The talent level of the guys that we keep bringing in year after year is not what I think a quality team should be doing. And the reason why is because, yes, you are good enough many times to win in a weak division, but you are never good enough to get past the first round in the playoffs with that mentality. It's just not the way that winners think. And we've heard it from some of our colleagues in the media. We've heard it from our anonymous source, Tom Carter, and we can just kind of see the actions. But it's the Atanasio regime is really in this zone where they want to be good enough to not get fans angered or turned off by the team, but they'll never do what it takes to be good enough to actually win a World Series in Milwaukee. And it's getting really tiring. And that came straight from our anonymous source, Tom Carter.
Yeah, you could just say TC. That would probably make him a little bit happier than revealing his actual name. But we'll remember that for future podcasts. But anyway, we'll keep staying positive. But I know the Brewers winter warm up or whatever they're calling it this year or whatever they made up. They're charging $42 for you to go see some kind of live show and get autographs. So in order for me to bring my two kids, it would cost me $130 for a couple of hours, get one autograph and see 1 hour of some game show. They can take I'm going to take my money and keep it where it's at. And Mark Antonassa can go. I guess I'll bite my tongue at this point, but yeah. So unless they start spending some money,
you know how much it costs to go to the Astros winter warm up, Craig?
What?
$1 to get in.
That's what it should be. You should be introducing your team to the younger generation, the fans.
That's what it is. It's $1.
I mean, if you want to limit it to adults or whatever, or limit or charge adults, that's one thing, but to be charging kids $42 to go to an event like this is ridiculous. Like, it's just,
Oh, let's not discriminate. Like, why charge anybody that? It's crazy. It's down here in Houston. I just looked at it during this podcast just to verify. It's $1 to get in the door, and it's free autographs, people of any ages, and they're there for several days. And if you volunteer at one of the booths, it's free entry, which is, a variety of things. It could be charities, but it could also be baseball related things. I just got a note from our Sabre president here in the group. If anyone wants to work the booth, it's, free to get in. Otherwise it's $1 to get in generally. So that's it.
nice.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us, fans. And remember to stay classy and go Brewers.
All right, Craig. Good episode, guys. Thanks, Scotty. Thanks, Chad. Go Brewers. Do, 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 do.